This interview was recorded with Sir Jack Brabham just after his last ever Grand Prix, the 1970 Mexican Grand Prix. Jack was very unlucky in that 1970 season. At the age of 44, in terms of pace, he was right up there with Jochen Rindt, Jackie Stewart and Jackie Ickx. But a lot of silly things happened, and as a result, he didn't win the championship. And anyway, he had made a pledge to his family to stop. And this is an interview he gave when he made that decision, when he announced that decision in Mexico in 1970.
Well, I started off midget car racing on cinder tracks in Australia, which is the sort of racing that's done a lot in America and Australia. It was towards the end of 1947, what we call the 47-48 season out there, because the season used to start about September and go till about April. And that was really my start, and I had about 6 years of cinder track driving before I ventured out into road racing. I was invited to a hill climb at the Hawkesbury Hill Climb near Sydney just to demonstrate a midget car on the hill climb with the Light Car Club of Australia. And I think I took about 5 or 6 seconds or more off their hill record. And at the time they didn't expect this, of course, and they thought, God, we can't have this. So I was disqualified actually because the car only had 2-wheel brakes, which is all we used to use on the speedway. So then of course this got my back up, and I thought, right, well if that's the case I'll go and put 4-wheel brakes on it. So I went home and fitted 4-wheel brakes to the car and went down to Rob Roy in 1951 and entered the Australian Hill Climb Championship, and of course won that with the car, which then sort of got me interested in road racing cars, and I moved on from then and bought a Mark IV Cooper, which I also used a little bit in hill climbs, but mainly started then on circuit racing, which was really the beginning of my road racing career, which would have been 1952. Probably after driving so many years on cinder tracks, hanging the tail out was really the way that, or the only way to get around a cinder circuit. And of course, having the tail hanging out was really my style of driving. That's the way I thought it should be done. But of course, I soon learnt in Europe that the type of road racing and more sophisticated cars that we were driving, that this wasn't the way to do it. My first event was at Goodwood on Easter Monday 1955, and probably I made my first big mistake in motor racing, really coming to England by not bringing the Cooper Bristol car that I had in Australia at the time, because I was influenced by other people that it'd be far better to sell the car in Australia and buy a better one in England, and I found this was very difficult, and finished up with a car, of course, that was inferior to the one I had in Australia, purely because any car that was really good in this country obviously wasn't for sale. Probably the most exciting race I had was in 1959 when I won the Monaco Grand Prix, and being my first Grand Prix win, naturally this stuck in my mind for a long time and was really a sense of achievement that every young driver really had an ambition for. From a whole career achievement, the fact of winning the first Grand Prix in a Brabham car at Reims at that time was probably the most satisfying race I think I've ever had. A sense of achievement, the fact that we've constructed a car and win the World Championship with it. Even more satisfying from my point of view, because I'd been to Australia and convinced Repco that it was possible to build an engine and go and win Grand Prix racing, which I think was really backed in a very, very fine way. They really put their back into it and had the engine built in very, very quick time, which was the secret of the success of the thing, because we did actually get onto the circuit with a 3-litre engine with very, very good torque, although it didn't have a lot of maximum power, and very reliable at the right time. And we won 2 World Championships straight off with that, with myself winning in 66 and Dennis Holman in 67. Yeah, unfortunately, it hasn't been a lucky year for one thing. I've really should have won 3 other races this year, and silly things have happened to me. Like one, we had an ignition problem at the Race of Champions at the start of the year when leading and really couldn't be beaten. And also at Monaco, I got tangled up with slow cars and had a little incident at the last corner when leading that also, and put me back to second place. And then, of course, the British Grand Prix when I ran out of petrol on the last lap when leading also. So from the actual overall season, I think it's been pretty unlucky. I've had many years of disappointment, really, and I almost retired at the end of last year, in fact, and we were actually talking to Jochen Rindt about the possibility of him driving in my place in the team. And of course, when this event didn't happen and Chapman finished up with Rindt, I decided to do one more year, and at that time I had made my mind up that it was only going to be one more year. The greatest as far as a name is concerned is probably Fangio, is the one that I've driven with, but I think the one that I probably learnt more from was Sterling Moss. Moss was right at his heyday in those days, and it was a very, very hard, aggressive driver, and driving with him I think taught me a lot. Sterling was the first of the real professional drivers. Yeah, the real hard professional driver. I don't think age makes a lot of difference, actually. In fact, as far as I myself is concerned, I feel that I'm just as competitive today as I was 10 years ago. And I enjoy driving just as much as I did then. But this doesn't apply to everybody, I know. I think you can take any sportsman, really, in any sport. It purely depends on the individual, the physical and mental outlook of the person concerned, and some people can go on to a ripe old age, like Fangio, for instance, who went to the age of 47, and other people might want to retire from the sport at 35. Age doesn't really necessarily be a guide. The thing that really spoils motorsport, I don't think anybody's had more enjoyment out of motorsport than what I have, probably, but the thing that does spoil it, occasionally we do lose a friend, which is a pretty bitter blow at the time. And I think what this does for us really is make us respect the sport that we're in. And I think the essential thing is that the drivers like myself treat the motorsport as being a dangerous sport, and bear this in mind at all times. And it's more essential to drive within your limits at all times. I'm hoping, of course, to be able to spend more time with my family. As you know, motor racing is a very demanding sport and requires it every hour of the day that you can give it. And I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to spend a lot more time with my family and also with other business interests that I have. I'm moving the family back to Australia, as they're very keen to go back there, but obviously I have business interests in England and Australia, and at the moment I often go back to Australia on a business trip, and if I'm back in Australia, I'm sure I'm going to be often back in Europe on business trips. So it really doesn't really matter which place I live in. My partner in the business, Ron Toronak, is taking over majority shares of the business and continuing it as it's been run before. This doesn't mean to say that I'm entirely dropping out of it, but it relieves me the responsibility of having to be at every meeting, because if I finished up as a team manager, if you like, and went to every meeting again next year, my time available to devote to the family and my other activities really wouldn't change. I might as well be driving still. So I've had to really try and retract from the racing activity in some way, and this was really the only way. And Ron, of course, will be continuing in Grand Prix racing next year, and the cars will continue to be called Brabhams. I've found from past experience that testing and developing motor cars is probably just as dangerous or more dangerous than actual motor racing, and it has to be treated as such, which means that you must be on the ball. And racing driving, I think, is a thing that you've got to keep at and do often. It's not the sort of thing you can come back and do occasionally. I think this is the part that would make it dangerous.
And I've added this as a little bit of a bonus. This is Jack talking immediately after the 1970 British Grand Prix, which was one of those races that he should have won. In reality, it was an easy win for him. He stalked Jochen Rindt for most of the race and then passed him, pulled away, was leading easily. As he explains in this interview, if the engine had started to stutter out of fuel just a couple of 100 yards later, not requiring him to brake for that tight left-hander, he could have coasted across the line, through clearways and across the line to win the British Grand Prix, but it ran out of fuel. At the time, they didn't know the reason for that, but we now know it was due to a mixture setting, an incorrect mixture setting applied before the race. A lot of blame initially passed towards Ron Dennis, who was one of the mechanics on Jack's car that year at Brabham. But eventually it was revealed that it was Nick Guzzi, who went on to work for Penske and has done a great job for Roger Penske over the years, who was a mechanic also and did, with as mechanics do, occasionally made a mistake, bit of finger trouble, and the wrong mixture was put into the car. Anyway, this is Jack immediately after that 1970 British Grand Prix, arguably the race that lost him effectively the World Championship in 1970.
Well, I've got to the stage this year where nothing surprises me anymore. So the car was running beautifully and I'd slowed up quite a bit, but unfortunately it ran out of fuel 300 yards too early because it meant that I had to brake for Moss's Corner after it had run out of fuel, and which stopped my coasting speed. Had it got round the corner before it run out of fuel, I could have still coasted the line in front of Rindt. So really, it stopped 300 yards too soon. I was very comfortable behind him, although I couldn't pass him easily. The places where I was quicker than him was places where I couldn't pass anyway. On the straight, his car was very quick initially, and I was unable to get sufficient benefit slipstreaming or any way. So I had to really lay on him, hoping that he would make a mistake or we get fouled up with a slow car. He half missed a gear coming into the straight, and I was able to get alongside of him, although I wasn't able to pass him. And then I was able to outbrake him at the bottom of the straight, and that was my only way of getting by. But once I was by, I'm sure that he couldn't have passed me again. Well, according to our calculations, we had 5 gallons more than what we needed. Because the big problem is, in a very hard, fast race like that, it's very difficult to estimate just how much fuel you're likely to use. The other thing is, of course, we're not absolutely 100% sure that there isn't fuel left in the car. It's possible it may not be picking it up, or something may have happened to the fuel pump. We don't really know. All we know is that it ran out of fuel pressure on the last lap. In practice, we had a few problems. We'd altered the car considerably, and it wasn't until the end of the practice that we really felt that the car was starting to be competitive again. Actually, I think we've made big strides with the car this meeting, and the car is certainly going a lot more competitively than it has in the last 2 or 3 races. It looks like we might be out of the World Championship, but we might have a chance of winning a couple more races yet.